Hey everybody, welcome to the October monthly Zeal Call. First Zeal Call that we've had in a while. And we decided, since it's been a while, we're going to just jam pack the agenda with a lot of exciting updates. So it's October 27th, the day before Zcash's 4th birthday. And we have not one, but two special guests joining us today. I'll start with a brief welcome and then Zcash announcements. For some of you, it might have been a while since you've checked in with the Zcash community. So it's good to know kind of like top of mind what's going on. And then we'll hand it over to our friend Trevor from Flexa, although you could rebrand as Trevor. That could be a good DJ name. Yeah, Trevor from Flexa will give us an overview of a really exciting birthday campaign that we just kicked off this week. After that, we'll hand it over to Kevin Owocki from Gitcoin, and there's another really exciting initiative or event that Zcash is kicking off with Gitcoin today or this week as well. And then if we have time, we'll end with Q&A and just kind of open discussion, but that is the agenda for today. So without further ado, let's move on over to some announcements. Okay, we are just about 3 weeks from Canopy activation, which is a huge deal if you're not familiar with the Zcash community or Zcash activities. Canopy is the 5th network upgrade for Zcash, and it coincides with two huge milestones for the project. First, it's going to be Zcash's very first halvening, and second, it will kick off a new community dev fund. So for the first 4 years, Zcash has had something called the Founders Reward, which helps fund protocol development. And now Canopy will activate the next 4 years, a different type of fund called the Community Development Fund. Really exciting. And if this is something that you're interested in, we have a lot of documentation and content about it, both in the ECC blog, in the Zcash Foundation blog, and also in the forums. And you can't talk about the Community Development Fund without talking about the MGRC. That's the Major Grants Review Committee. This is a special 5-person committee that was elected by the community to manage this Major Grants Fund. They have been meeting regularly. Some of them are on this very call. That's super exciting. So feel free to raise your hand if you're on the MGRC and also on the call. But they've been meeting regularly and also actively posting in the forum their meeting minutes. If you want to reach out to the MGRC, I believe they also have a channel in Discord. So that's 2 ways to reach out to MGRC. One is through the forum, and the second is through the Zcash community Discord channel. Electric Coin Company has a new events calendar, which is really exciting. You can now keep up to date and keep track of all the really cool events and webinars that we've been doing. It feels like we're doing like 3 a week at this point. But if you have Zcash related events, meetups, or conferences that you want us to put on the calendar, please feel free to email me. We'd love to raise awareness and support the great work that the Zcash community is doing. And lastly, Zcash Foundation is looking for volunteers to help moderate the forum. Sean posted in the Zcash forum kind of what that work entails. So if this is something you're interested in or something you'd like to pitch in with, please raise your hand or contact him directly in the Zcash forum. I will check the chat just to see what kind of chatter is going on. Yes. Okay, perfect. And just make sure if you want to send a comment to everyone on the Zeal call today, you can adjust the chat function to do, instead of all panelists and attendees. Otherwise, it'll your question will just go to the 4 panelists. All right. So happy birthday, Zcash. This is something that's pretty exciting. We've been looking forward to it for a few quarters now. The Zcash's 4th birthday, which means the 4th anniversary from when Zcash first launched, is tomorrow, October 28th. I wish I knew what the zodiac sign was for that, because we could do like an astrology chart of the whole life of Zcash. But yeah, tomorrow marks the 4th birthday for Zcash, and we decided to celebrate by doing something special with our friends Flexa. And what we're doing is a really cool campaign where if you have the Flexa app or the Spendin app and you download it, you can get $10 worth of Zcash to spend at Baskin Robbins or Dunkin' Donuts by using this code, HBD ZEC, Happy Birthday Zcash. So it looks like it's working. People are already using it. I went to Dunkin' Donuts this afternoon, actually, and bought some coffee. So you can use that credit for Baskin Robbins and Dunkin' Donut, and the credit expires on November 18th, which is canopy activation. It was all very well thought out. And the offer is good for the first 250 people who redeem the Zcash credits. So if you download it and you don't get around to using it, just be mindful that some people might beat you to the punch. So we're really excited about it, and we're kind of looking to see how long it's going to take for everybody to get their cake and ice cream, or their freshly brewed coffee, as the case may be, for if you're not a sweet tooth person or if you're kind of sensitive to dairy. And so I think like one thing that we've been really excited about in working with Flexa, and one reason I was super excited to bring Trevor into the Zeal Call, is because this aspect of Zcash as payment, or Zcash as a payment in, you know, big box, mainstream, non-crypto stores, is something we really don't spend enough time talking about as a community. And it's a very real use case. There's a lot of exciting activity in the space. And I think it really reveals a lot about our community that we might not have been aware of, or we might not have top of mind. So a few fast facts about Zcash on Flexa. First, Zcash is the 5th most spent asset on the Flexa network. In 2020, 1 out of every 15 transactions made with Flexa was made with Zcash. And this was something I think I was pretty surprised by, but you never know who uses Zcash. That's what's so cool about it. Zcash over-indexes on ice cream and beauty and wellness relative to other assets on the Flexa or the Spendin app. So it over-indexes by 9.5% for Baskin Robbins and over 20% for Ulta Beauty. So I always knew Zcash was a beautiful community, but now I really know y'all are beautiful on the inside and out. So how about that? Okay, so that was a little bit of an introduction for people who might not be as familiar with Spendin. And now I'm going to hand it over to Trevor for him to talk a little bit more about Flexa and his perspective on digital payments and the role that Zcash can play in that space.
Thank you so much, Elena. First of all, I just want to say we're really, really happy to be here. Flexa, the whole team at Flexa are huge fans of ZEC, ECC, and the Zcash community. And I think everyone that we've seen has their own reasons for spending or holding certain coins. But me personally, I really like actually spending my ZEC. It's so freaking fast compared to Bitcoin, but I also am really privacy inclined with all my purchasing. And so here today, sort of speak about why we've built Flexa, where we look at the future of digital payments, the role of privacy in payments going forward, hopefully answer some questions as we get to the end, and then talk about some future plans with Zcash. Basically, for those who are not familiar with Flexa, we have built a merchant product that is essentially acceptance technology at a merchant's point of sale. And so we can push authorization codes to terminals, in stores, and soon online, purely digitally and instantly, and then we can settle a crypto transaction or an exchange after the fact. And to prevent fraud on this platform, we've built out this open source collateralization protocol that we call AMP, that essentially decentralizes the payment risk to a staking platform. And our goal over the course of the next several decades is to basically make it possible to spend any coin using any app in any store. And you could think of this as wallet apps, but you could also think of it in the near term as things like loyalty apps and spending other digital assets than the ones that we're more familiar with in the crypto community, to eventually maybe even spending straight from your banking app. So if you think about how your bank account balance could essentially be digitized or tokenized into stablecoins, we want to support that as well. And what we really care about is more evenly distributed access to payments, particularly trying to break down some of the barriers that have existed for certain communities as we've built out credit checks and credit scoring systems, or as we've decided to service certain areas of the world and not others with financial technology. So that's, I think, where the mission overlap in our two companies and mission, broader communities is really strong. So that's kind of why Flexa exists, is trying to make payments more accessible, trying to make payments more modern. We believe that the future of digital payments, and really the future of payments generally, is not Visa or MasterCard. These are platforms that were essentially designed 70 years ago. And if you think about the fact that the internet has really only been around for about 40 years, we're basically taking an analog technology that hasn't been developed with the digital infrastructure we have all over the place today in mind at all. There's lots of fraud. There are multiple intermediaries. Even the nature of a payment transaction today is really about sending sensitive data through a system of maybe 12 different parties and hoping it doesn't get stolen at some point across the line. It gets stolen all the time. There's lots of fraud loss. It's very expensive. And we actually like to cite a study from the Kansas City Fed that says that the overall payment cost in the United States is actually about 2% of GDP. So we have a dead weight loss, a social cost of payments that is 2% of the gross domestic product of the US. It's a little lower abroad, but that's just unacceptable to us. And what we find is that the biggest impediment to getting merchants to migrate from this analog payment system to a digital payment system is really the organizational chart of that merchant. So you have things like economics and asset volatility or Forex handled by a treasury department, things like private key storage that would be handled by an IT or a security department. The mobile apps themselves often roll up to marketing. BSA AML compliance is in a different department. So you have all of these different entities across an organization that you kind of have to get onto the same page before you even start discussing the idea of accepting or holding digital assets. And so we look at this sort of as stages, and Flexa is designed to first enable really, really seamless acceptance with merchants. There's no new hardware, no new software. So when we rolled out with Dunkin', we didn't have to go to all of the different Dunkin' stores or Baskin Robbins stores and install new software on their terminals, because that would be really, really prohibitive for achieving scale. Once we enable that acceptance with merchants on their terms, we can start having conversations about enabling them to receive and use digital assets. And then finally, stage 3, we hope, is enabling their vendors to receive and hold digital assets. So we've essentially migrated the entire payment stack over from these analog payments to digital assets. And I think phases 2 and 3 are where Zcash and Zec particularly come into play. Because broadly, we have the opportunity to not only eliminate that deadweight loss or that social cost of payments I was talking about earlier, but there's so much more than that that we can take on. There's foreign exchange where $6 trillion worth of currencies are traded back and forth between what are essentially fiat entities every day. There are fraud losses that amount to the hundreds of billions because this payment system is analog and very holy, like lots of holes across the entire system. But perhaps more importantly, I think we're looking to reshape large businesses and their org charts around secure payments and secure storage of assets and value that is important to their company. So there's a huge role that privacy plays in those payments. And I really believe that if we rebuild payments without privacy, we've completely failed. There's this question of regulation and what is technically allowed in certain jurisdictions. And I think, honestly, the New York Department of Financial Services and our collaborations with them, Gemini's collaborations with them, and so forth, have shown that there are examples of successful regulation when it comes to privacy. I think that the DFS in particular, with launching shielded withdrawal support on Gemini recently, understands how this technology works, and they try to understand the impact of crypto on the world. They recently released a report speaking to the Bitcoin Twitter hack, and they talked about how they think regulation can be successful. So you can have privacy and regulation hand in hand. And one of the ways I would point to that, which actually goes back to when I first met Josh and Zuko from ECC in Palm Springs a couple of years ago, is that Flexa by default is completely anonymous to the merchant. And so when a customer spends, all of our payments are represented completely identically to one another as far as what the merchant can see. There's no way for a merchant to track your spending across Flexa payments. And that's something that we had just built from day one. The other aspect of that is the merchant anonymity and allowing merchants to accept payments without necessarily tipping off their competitors. So if you think about large electronics brands, for example, and their Black Friday sales, if we move that all to a public blockchain, it's going to be very, very difficult for merchants to retain a competitive edge because all of their transaction volume will be public. And so we really, really care about the idea of not only making the source of those funds and the destinations of those payments anonymous, but also the amounts eventually. And so that sort of brings me to our last bullet in terms of our future plans with Zcash, which is to say that we already support Zcash across our network. You can spend Zcash today using the Gemini app and the Sedna app. We are launching our Spend SDK at the end of this year, which will support Zcash payments from any number of other wallets, including open source and hopefully non-custodial wallets that are interested. We are certainly going to continue our partnership with ECC in terms of more campaigns and in terms of getting merchants to agree to give away Zcash and give away credit. I think that's really interesting because it gives us an opportunity to help educate merchants about the value of these crypto assets and helping to teach merchants that Bitcoin is not just for criminals. Zcash is not a way to evade sanctions. These are actual technologies that people of all backgrounds, speaking to the sort of payment stats that we've seen specifically within the Zcash community, these are payment systems that people want to use. I think eventually we could even perhaps get merchants to accept shielded payments directly, where we are making a payment end to end without Flexa really having knowledge of the source or the destination, but also maintaining compliance with BSA and AML regulations in the US and elsewhere. And so if we can get big merchants to receive and hold Zcash themselves at the end of our, let's say, 10, 20-year journey, then I think that'll be a huge success for us. So those are sort of the ways we think about it.
Trevor, that's awesome.
Yeah, should we turn to some questions
more.
maybe?
Yeah, here. I think there's been some chatter in the chat. Thibaut asks, what are next things for Flexa? Maybe Flexa beyond specific to Zcash. You answered a little bit what a Z to Z future might look like for Flexa. And then I think those were the two main questions. There's a lot of exclamation points, a lot of what you were saying was resonating with people. And then somebody else, Abdi, asks, will Flexa or Zcash work with PayPal? So yeah, three good questions for you.
Great questions. Next things for Flexa, we have put all of our focus into the Spend platform and the Connect platform, which are our two developer platforms. Spend being for wallets and other apps that want to support payments from those customers, and then Connect being our platform for merchants. We have probably 10 or 12 different Connect integrations in the works right now with big merchant platforms and middleware providers. So I think it's just about adoption, honestly, in terms of what's next. In terms of Flexa or Zcash working with PayPal, I can't speak to I can't speak to that specifically, but what I can say is that we have been working with merchants who have expressed interest in having their crypto payments flow through one pipe. And certainly there's nothing precluding an integration between PayPal and the Spend SDK in the same way that there's nothing precluding an integration between the Spend SDK and say the Nighthawk wallet. So I probably can't say anything that's going to get me in trouble, but
super coy. I love that. Very coy. Possible. A little wink, wink. Yes. And then so what was I believe there was one last question that we may have time for.
Sure.
Bujati just asked, is Flexa network and banking app integration, what could that look like?
I think that the future of digital assets, or well, let's say digital asset payments, is going to happen kind of under our noses, in the sense that we won't necessarily as consumers know that we're using digital assets to make a purchase. I mean, there's so many qualities of digital currencies and digital assets that lend themselves to merchant needs and real merchant problems. And so a banking app integration with Flexa looks like you are paying with your banking app. It is riding the Flexa rails, and behind the scenes, it's using some form of asset, likely a stable asset like USDC, let's say, to facilitate the transfer to the merchant. So I think that's probably what that looks like.
Awesome. And then we also will have time at the very end for Q&A. Trevor, thank you for that overview. I wanted to show people, I just had it loaded up on my phone, the Baskin-Robbins scan that I used earlier today. Let me see if I can pull it up again just to show people. So it's called a flex code when you're using the Flexa app. And I used it earlier today. Oh, it just came up. So I wanted to show people really quickly what that looks like, or what that would look like. Okay, I'll move on to the, here you go.
I'll pull it up on my side as well. Yeah, I've got
that's what it looks like.
Wallet too.
So now,
and so it just pops up. It's a one-time use code, and like you could take a screenshot of this and not be able to use it as soon as I swipe it off the screen, because that's the kind of authorization technology that we've built with the merchant. It's really cool.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks again, Trevor, for giving us the latest and greatest updates on Flexa. And then I hope everybody goes and gets their Zcash sponsored birthday ice cream, or kind of whatever flavor you want from Dunkin' Donuts. And
happy birthday, Zcash.
Thanks. Okay. And now, moving right along, another really exciting update from our friends at Gitcoin. So earlier this week, or I think over the weekend, Kevin Owocki posted this really awesome artwork. If you're into anything creative, you should definitely check out just the aesthetics and the images that come out of the Gitcoin community. I love them. This image I thought was a really good way to set up what we're going to talk about today, which is a new Zcash Gitcoin Grants round. So Kevin, I'm happy to hand it over to you. You really are someone who needs no introduction, also because I believe you were one of the last guests on a previous Zeal call. So people spoke with you earlier this summer. Yeah. So take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Elena. So hi, everyone. My name is Kevin Owocki. I am the founder of Gitcoin, which is a place that you can get coins if you're an open source software developer, or a designer or a knowledge worker who's working on open source software. Our mission is to enable anyone to work on the open internet. And we've launched a Gitcoin Grants round, a 25K Gitcoin Grants round, in which we're going to be matching crowdfunding contributions to various open source projects in the Zcash ecosystem. Gitcoin's, I guess, air quotes, famous in the Ethereum ecosystem for funding Ethereum projects. We've given out $8 million to various Ethereum projects, 3.6 million through Gitcoin Grants. And this is a big milestone for us because we re-architected a lot of the application to make it so that we could natively accept Zcash payments into Gitcoin Grants. So really super pumped for really super pumped to support open source cryptography research. I think that cryptography is a prerequisite to privacy in the digital age, and the Zcash ecosystem is on the bleeding edge of research and development there. So if you go to gitcoin.co/grants, you will now see a Zcash section that is there. And if you click on the create grant button right there, you can create a grant for whatever project you're working on in the Zcash community. And so the idea here is that we have a 25K matching pool, and we will be matching contributions to Zcash projects between, starting now until 11/17. And then we're going to announce the winners on 11/18. We're going to be kind of treating this week as a soft launch. This is our first time ever working on a non-Ethereum blockchain. And so this is the week to get your grants posted, to do some test contributions. All of those contributions will count towards matching. But the real official tweet about it and tell all your friends launch is going to be on 11/2, which is this upcoming Monday. And super pumped to be doing this engagement with y'all. So if you're working on a Zcash open source project, a project that needs funding in the ecosystem, we would love to talk to you. We would love to get a grant up. So I guess Elena, can we get that link, the create a grants link in the chat so that people can hit it and go put their grants up? Thanks. So one last, I guess, like why this is super powerful. Gitcoin Grants is based off of this thing called quadratic funding, which is basically a formula for running a matching round. Whereas instead of doing a one-to-one matching to the grants that is going out, we're doing something called quadratic funding. And basically the way that works is that if grant A gets 10 contributions of $1, so $10 in crowdfunding, and grant B gets 1 contribution of $10, so $10 in crowdfunding, both of them have gotten the same amount of crowdfunding, but grant 1 will get almost 10 times the amount of matching because it had a broader base of support. So basically what we're trying to do is push power to the edges and allow projects to be funded because their peers care about the project, not because some like central administrator of a grants fund thinks that the project is worthwhile. What we're really trying to do is measure, does the community care about this project? And that's why quadratic funding has been a hit in the Ethereum community. Hopefully it'll be a hit in the Zcash community as well.
Awesome.
So,
Kevin, before we go to the demo, I have 2 questions that might be helpful for people on the call. First is, does it cost anything to post a grant? And second is, can you talk a little bit about, like, once I post a grant, what happens if I find like a typo or I want to edit it or update the grant?
Sure.
For people who want to do that this week, what should be some best practices that they keep in mind?
For sure. No cost to host a grant. You can post a grant anytime, and we do have some edit functionality. Basically, when you create a grant, you can select other users of Gitcoin and make them co-administrators of the grant, and anyone can go in and update the title, description, attributes of the grant. The only thing that we don't allow people to change is the payment address, the Zcash T address, because we just, we don't want anyone, like in the scenario in which someone gets access to one of your team members' accounts and changes the funding address, we just that seems like a whole thing. So if there's anything that you can't change on the grant, then you can always open up a GitHub issue with us, and our team responds usually within 24 hours on a business day. So yeah, the TLDR is it's free to post a Gitcoin grant. You can update it anytime on gitcoin.co/grants. And if you can't update it, then you can always log a support request with us on GitHub, and we'll take care of it.
Nice. So should we do a little demo? Are you ready for that?
I'm so ready. Yes.
Nice. Okay, I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen, which means you should be able to start sharing your screen.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Elena. All right, so this is gitcoin.co. And I'm going to start off by just showing you the Gitcoin results page, which I put a link to in the chat. Gitcoin has delivered almost $8 million. Hopefully we'll cross $8 million in the next month or so of funding for open source software in the Ethereum ecosystem. So this is a proven campaign that works in the Ethereum space, and Zcash is adjacent, friendly with the Ethereum space. So I'm really super hopeful that the 25K matching pool that we just announced for Zcash is going to go really super well. So this is Zcash round 1, just to sort of like ground you in what's happened in the Ethereum community. We've done 7 rounds in the Ethereum community. We started off with a 25K round, and now we're doing 500K rounds for the Ethereum community. So it's kind of taken off. If you play that forward in the Zcash community, if this round goes well, then hopefully we could be doing a lot of funding for the Zcash community. So this is gitcoin.co/grants/Zcash, and this is sort of like the landing pod for all of the Zcash grants that we're going to have in this round. If you go in and you click create a grant right on this landing page right here, you will be prompted for a logo for your project, a title for your project, a description for your project, website, Twitter handle, GitHub URL, all of that good stuff. And this is the new thing that reflects like 2 or 3 weeks of rewriting and re-architecture on our side. It doesn't look like much on the front end, but we can now natively fund Gitcoin grants with Zcash. This is the first cross-chain integration that we've done for Zcash. We only support T addresses right now, but we really want to invest the integration work into supporting Z addresses in the future, knowing how important privacy is to the Zcash community. And so you can go in and you can just fill out this form. Should take, if you already have project like information like boilerplate written up about your project, it should take no more than 5 minutes to create a grant. And then once you've created a grant, it will show up at gitcoin.co/grants/Zcash. And then that's when the fund starts. So the fund starts when you can go in here, you can add a grant to your cart, and now you can check out natively using Zcash for that grant. So basically I'm going to go in and I'm going to do a test payout to this test grant that I created using my Trust wallet on my iPhone. So we've tested Zec wallet and we've tested Trust wallet, and they're both working. Hopefully we'll make sure that all of these, like that every wallet in the Zcash ecosystem is working eventually. But those are the ones that we've tested with for now. We're going to take my QR code scanner, scan this QR code, and then I'm going to broadcast this transaction right here to the platform. So I just sent 0.01 ZEC ZEC to the grant. And then I just put in my contributor address so that the system can attribute the contribution to me. And then when I click confirm, the grant contribution will be received. And then the matching amount associated with that grant is going to be updated. So basically, the transactions that go to the grant address are instant and they go directly to the grant. Gitcoin never, ever, ever, ever touches those funds. And then we have a matching estimate that will show up in the UI as the contributions roll in. And the thing that's super cool about quadratic funding, again, is that the grants that are more broadly popular are going to be the ones that are going to get the most matching funds. So again, if you have grant 1 that has 10 contributions worth $1, and then grant 2, which has 1 contribution worth $10, then the match amount that will go to the one that's more broadly democratic. So it's worth spending 0.01 ZEC on funding your favorite grants because you're voting with quadratic funding here. Every vote really counts. And the cool thing about quadratic funding is that once a grant gets really widely popular, then you can see these crazy, insane matching amounts where you contribute $1 and you get $75 worth of matching to the project. So that's the really cool and powerful thing about Gitcoin grants. And it's why every time we launch a grant in the Ethereum community, there's sort of a race to get as many $1 contributions as possible, because it lets you rise in the leaderboard, and it just really it gets people over this free rider effect of why should we fund Zcash or open source projects, because the reason you should do it is because your contribution really matters. You're voting with your dollars where the matching pool is going. And that's going to become a super powerful thing for us in the Ethereum ecosystem. There are people in the Ethereum ecosystem who live off of Gitcoin grants and quadratic funding now. We call them quadratic freelancers. And so I'm really passionate about open source software and creating more quadratic freelancers in the Ethereum ecosystem. And hopefully we'll start to see more grant funding flow in a democratic way in the Zcash ecosystem if this pilot goes well. So TLDR is go to gitcoin.co/grants/Zcash and open up a grant today. And we will be available if you have any questions, comments for the next week or so. And then 11/2 is when we'll actually start really asking everyone to go in and fund their favorite Zcash grants.
And Kevin, do you need to be an open source? Do you need to be developing an open source project in order to post a grant? Could I post a grant for a private company that's working on top of Zcash? How would that work? What have you seen done in the past?
Yeah, so our mission is certainly to grow and sustain open source, but we're not dogmatic about that. I'm of the mind that anything that's creating an advancement in the Zcash ecosystem should be funded. And so, the key here is that I don't want to be a gatekeeper. We're providing a platform that allows you to post the grants. And if the Zcash community decides it only wants to fund the open source projects in there, then that's up to the Zcash community. But it's not up to me as the person who's running the platform to make those rules. The key is that your peers respect your project, and that's what's going to cause a project to get most of the matching pool. So I guess that's a long way of saying, no, it's not just open source projects.
Nice. And I have another question before we open it up to Q&A. And people in the chat, please feel free to keep those questions coming. They're all really great.
Sure.
Kevin, at the beginning, I talked about how, November 18th, that's a big day because not only is it the first Zcash happening, but it's also the beginning of this, community dev fund, and the major grants review committee is going to kind of begin the important work of
Sure.
funding the future of Zcash. How do you see a tool like the Zcash Gitcoin Grants helping or amplifying the work that they do?
For sure. I feel like a little bit like when I go to an Ethereum event, I give lots of high fives and hugs, and I feel like an insider. I feel like a little bit of an outsider in the Zcash community. I've been following y'all since launch, but it's not really my place to say. But one way that I think, with all that disclaimer aside, one way I think that could be really interesting is that the major grants review committee, I understand, is going to control a lot of capital. And I think that one of the cool things about Gitcoin grants is that if round 1 goes well, we could do bigger rounds, rounds 2 and rounds 3. And basically the major grants review committee could kind of be like a complementary approach to Gitcoin grants, where basically Gitcoin grants is where you go to prove that your peers and other people in the community really care about your project. And that's where you go to get funding in a permissionless way. Whereas the major grants review committee can be for like larger funding amounts after projects have proven themselves in the ecosystem. So I think that they're a complementary approach, but that's just a theory at this point. We'll see how the first round goes and whether or not this even takes off in the ecosystem. Nice.
Well, we sure hope it does. Do you have some kind of lessons learned from the 7 Ethereum grant rounds? Like, is there a sweet spot in terms of how big or small the grant should be, in terms of like how ambitious it should be? Is there like a certain type of grant that you see does pretty well? Can you share any of that insight for people who might be considering applying?
Sure. I mean, I think the grants that do well are the ones that the community respects. And so one of the norms that has sort of proliferated in the Ethereum community is that, like, just give me $1. Like, it's just $1. And what you're really doing there is showing your support for the project in terms of like, I care about this enough to take out my wallet and give you $1. Or I guess in the Zcash community, maybe the analog is just give me like 0.01 ZEC in order to prove that you care about this project. It's about getting those small contributions from your contributor, and the people who aren't afraid to tweet about it and aren't afraid to ask for contributions are the ones who get that really crazy network effect of more like you're playing a multiplayer game where the more contributors that come in, the amount of matching you get grows quadratically. So the powerful thing is just to get your community to prove that they care by giving out $1, and that's really the best practice. I think that in the Ethereum community, we've got infrastructure tech, and we've got dApps that are built, and then we've got community funds, which like funds meetups and blogs and stuff. And that's just because we have so much. Like, we have 1,000 projects in the Ethereum community. The Zcash round is only 25K, and it's just kind of like a pilot. So if you're a blog, if you're a meetup, if you're running an open source repository, you're all in that same 25K fund. And I don't know that there's a specific type of project that is going to do better. because, you know, it's just really about what kind, are you providing value to your community, and value can take so many different forms. So, you know, maybe one day when we do Zcash Gitcoin Grants round 5 and we're doing 500K, we'll know a little bit better which projects will get funded. But for now, I think that the rule of thumb is just, if you're providing value, then people will give back to you.
Yeah, that's the dream. I see somebody posted in the channel just yeah, now Trevor shared it with everybody. Nighthawk and Flexa would be a cool grant application. So maybe it could be called something like Flexhawk. Just some free ideas out there for you guys. And yeah, I put the timeline up here again. So today, this Gitcoin Grants is soft launched and the matching has started. So any kind of votes or contributions that people get will count towards the overall kind of public total. Is that correct, Kevin?
Yep, that's right. We're not making too much noise about it this week, just because like this is our first time doing Zec, and we just want to make sure any bugs are ironed out this week. But starting 11/2, that's when I think we're really off to the races. We're going to count contributions now, but would ask people not to make too much noise about it until we've worked through any kinks this week.
Great. So with that, I mean, this was a jam-packed Zeal call. I hope everybody enjoyed it. We can end on Q&A if anybody has any questions, or just kind of open discussion. There's a lot of excitement in the chat from both of the projects that we talked about today, the Flexa Happy Birthday Zcash campaign, as well as the Zcash Gitcoin Grants round 1. So yeah, I'd love to open it up to people who maybe have questions or have like a specific topic related to these two presentations that they want to discuss. And I'd be particularly interested if we have, you know, anybody who has a vision for what this could look like for the future of Zcash, especially kind of post-halvening, post-community dev fund. And we have just about 15 minutes left. We can always end early. If people want to hop off the call and start creating their Gitcoin grants right away, that's also completely understandable. Just one last question, Kevin, for people who maybe have never used Gitcoin before. What do you need to use Gitcoin? Like, do you need a MetaMask wallet? Do you need a GitHub account? What are the, like, before you get started, things that people should have already set up?
For sure. So no MetaMask required. We, if you're going to do Ethereum stuff, then you need MetaMask or a Web3 wallet, but no MetaMask required, just a GitHub account. We have an OAuth to GitHub that when you click login, it'll prompt you for your GitHub account, and have long-term plans to make that Google or any other OAuth provider. But for now, it's just GitHub is all you really need. And then so you need GitHub and you need some Zec and a wallet that supports QR codes in order to do this.
Nice. And the two that you mentioned that you've tested it with are Trust Wallet and Zec Wallet, correct?
Yep, that's right.
Great. So I'd like to thank both of you guys, Trevor and Kevin, for joining us today. It's a huge week for Zcash after a huge quarter for Zcash, and it's been really a big year for Zcash with like so much amazing activity in the Zecosystem. If maybe we can get that to stick. That's a little pun we've been workshopping internally. So yeah, I think like it's been really exciting, and hopefully this will be the energy that we bring into like the next chapter of the Zcash kind of 4-year future, like its next step. Somebody asks, can you use a wallet that just supports text addresses and not QR codes? Is that okay?
Yep. That's totally fine. We haven't tested that though, so do me a favor, I just put a link in the chat. If you have any issues, then just throw up a GitHub issue. Our engineers are pretty responsive, and hopefully we can work through whatever the issue is. Nice.
Okay. Any last minute questions? I'll kind of keep the line open for a few more minutes, but it looks like it's been a jam-packed agenda, and it's always nice to have kind of end a little bit early and get a few minutes back for the rest of the day. So we'll do going once, going twice. This recording will be posted on the Electric Coin Company's YouTube channel. Feel free to check that out. That's where we post all of the Zeal Call recordings. And then, yeah, follow us on Twitter to stay up to date with the latest and greatest Zcash updates. So it looks like we're good. Thanks again, Kevin and Trevor, or DJ Trevor. Trevor, if you're into it. Yeah, couldn't be more excited to work with you all, and thank you for helping us make this ecosystem grow.
Thanks,
Thank you
Elena.
so
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
This is awesome.